In this video, we'll talk about time, and you'll quite quickly understand that the real-world implication of priority is that you start behaving a bit differently. This is your trend. It might be a financial trend, your turnover, your profit, something that's really important to you. It might be a bit more positive, it might be more negative, but this is your trend. What's really interesting is that if you only allocate time on today activities, chances are you'll continue your trend. And the reason that you're probably watching this video is that you want to take a leap from that trend. And it's only the really high performing companies that allocate proactively time on the tomorrow activities that has the potential to make this leap. However, for a lot of companies, they get stuck in their whirlwind, the shit of yesterday. They get penalized over and over again because they've never really successfully implemented a structured way of freeing up time to focus on the tomorrow activities. And if we look into the high-performing cultures, roughly they allocate 70% of their time on today activities, 20% of the time on the shit of yesterday. Everyone have this problem. But what makes them unique is that they can allocate 10% of their time on tomorrow, the next-gen products. However, low-performing companies, they fail to do this. They get stuck in their whirlwind, and 55% of the time is dedicated to the today activities, but almost 45% of the time is getting stuck in the shit of yesterday. But the big difference actually is that they fail to invest for the future. And that doesn't necessarily make a big difference in the short run, but it makes a huge difference over time. You might sit there and wonder, okay, I want to free up the tomorrow activities, but how do I start? One realization is that if you have a bonus or incentive program in place right now, it's rigged solely on shit of yesterday and today. Chances are you don't incentivize the tomorrow activities. And if you were to go to a functional manager that you have today and say, I want you to do more of this, he or she might also say, but wait a minute, we don't make any money on this today. 99% of my current business is not on tomorrow, it's here and now. And that's really a good point in many ways. But it's this point that is really the difference maker between the business agile companies and the non-business agile companies. And that's what McKinsey talks about when they talk about 40% higher relative revenue growth and 52% higher profits. One way of looking at this, and there's been interesting time studies done where they split up time on CEO and executive level, mid-management and an employee level, and looking into how does these business agile companies spend and allocate their time. For CEO and the C-suite, the executive management team, 30% of their time is spent solely proactively on what's most important for tomorrow, these strategic initiatives that we've been talking about. And this is a point in the video where I would urge you to go into your calendar, look into your last week, and look, did I actually allocate proactively going into the future, investing time to make this company more aligned towards what's most strategically important? 30% of the time, that means a day and a half, which is quite a lot. On the mid-management level, the equal number is 15%. And what makes them really unique is that they, on an employee level, allocate 10% of their time each and every week towards these strategic initiatives. So what does the non-business agile company do, the everyday company? Well, on a CEO and executive level, the 30% becomes 15%, and that doesn't really make that big of a difference. But on a mid-manager level, the 15% goes to 5%, and on the employee level, the 10% becomes 1%. And it's there you'll find the big difference. Let me paint you a scenario. You're a small company. You have a management team of 6 people, 30 mid-level managers, and 300 employees. On the management level, you go from 72 hours proactively invested to 24 hours. And that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. You can say, well, with 24 hours, it's more than a half full-term resource allocated towards what's strategically most important. You might actually be quite happy about that. Well, the problem is not on that level. On your middle management level, the 240 hours invested every week becomes 60. But what's really interesting is on the employee level, 1,200 hours becomes 120 hours. The 1,500 hours becomes 200 hours. And this was a small company, right? This problem amplifies the bigger the organization is. And this is actually the difference. So these business agile companies, they use 1,500 hours each week in a small company to proactively invest in this added part of the strategy. Say that you're not a business agile company. You say that, well, we will get the 1,200 hours difference back, right? Well, in reality, those are 1,200 more hours for shit of yesterday activities. So these are not even the today type of activities that you get. Hopefully you're sitting there thinking, well, makes sense. I want to challenge my managers to free up more time towards this proactive, value-adding tomorrow type of activities. Chances are, when you talk to your management team about this, that they'll come up with 1 of 100 different reasons why right now is not a great timing. Maybe Q2 next year, maybe 2 years from now. But the problem is with the more and more disrupted reality is that you're never going to have that time. And you're kind of forced to make that time today. A way more reasonable objection from one of your managers is, well, what do you want me to skip, right? You don't want to just add on top. That's not really prioritizing. And that's really interesting. And if we split up a company's time again into the today and the shit of yesterday time, the low-performing companies, they spend 55% of the time on the today activities. And for you, it's not really there where you try to maximize the potential. I mean, those are value-creating activities, right? It's more important to say, okay, what part of our everyday work is the shit of yesterday activities? Looking into the high-performing companies, well, they have 20 roughly % shit of yesterday activities. So you can't totally eliminate it, but it makes sense that somewhere around 30% of the time that you have going on today is spent on stuff that you don't want your company focusing on. And now we'll come back to a concept that we talked about before. We talked about the fact that prioritizing doesn't only mean adding stuff to the top, right? It also means being clear about what should we stop doing. In order for you to get a good start, one of the things that you really can do as a manager, and especially if you're a CEO watching, is being clear on what is not a priority right now. Chances are that you have parts of your organization that is not aware of what can they actually stop doing. What is no longer a priority? So I would really urge you as a manager, and especially if you're the CEO watching, to be clear about what is not a priority anymore. And communicate this clearly at the same time as you communicate what is the top most important strategic initiatives. And if you really want to be successful, I urge you to keep on watching.